You know it's football season when you find yourself clicking on start and sit videos by the fantasy headliners. Welcome into our enhanced start and sit videos for the 2025 season, something that you've never seen before, and I can promise you, you won't find anywhere else on YouTube. For 2 years now, we've been trying to formulate the perfect start and sit videos, and we feel like we've finally done that. No more going over guys that you're absolutely going to be starting every single week. We'll touch base on them, but we're going to be going into the players that could go nuclear, the guys that could be landmines, and a brand new algorithm that's going to help us try and determine for those guys that are really questionable each week whether or not we should be playing them. So if you're returning for 2025 and you've watched our start and sit videos in the past, you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for this entire video. If you don't have all the time in the world, then speed it up to 2x and listen to all of the content while you figure out exactly what you're going to be getting from us this season. The first section of each start and sit video is going to be our must starts for the week. Every single player that, regardless of matchup or whatever may be going on for them, we're going to be playing no matter what. These are the guys that we really don't have a ton of questions about. And if you are trying to figure out which one of these guys you should start, well, our rankings videos at the end of each week will definitely help you determine that. But maybe it's time for a little bit more of a competitive league if you're trying to figure out which one of these guys to play over another. This week I have 19 running backs listed as must starts. One of the reasons why there's so many this week is because it's the first week of the season. A lot of these guys you spent a pretty decent draft pick on, they're going to be in your lineup no matter what. Talking about a James Cook, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, Jonathan Taylor, guys like that, you're playing no matter what. You are going to see some names pop up like a Tony Pollard for Tennessee. Tony Pollard this week going up against Denver doesn't feel like the greatest matchup in the world. However, there's no Tajay Spears and there's really no backup to Tony Pollard that you can rely on as much as you could with him. And last season when there was no Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard was a fringe RB1, if not an RB1, every single week. Week 1 of the season, this is a guy that you probably drafted as a flex option, and at worst, that's where he should be in your lineup. Ashton Jeanty, you used a first round draft pick on the guy. Are we really considering sitting him in week 1? If you drafted him, you're not concerned about the offensive line. And maybe the ceiling is a little bit lower in week 1, but the touches should be there, which definitely helps his floor. And speaking of ceilings and floors, 2 of the highest ceiling running backs in the NFL, probably every single week the rest of the season, Saquon Barkley and Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery will start 2025 as a must start for me, and that could end up changing as the season goes on, and maybe he finds himself in the landmines or the nuclear, or maybe even a little bit later on he finds himself in the tough calls section. But as of right now, he's going to stay in must start based on what we know about this Detroit offense. The offensive coordinator switch to Johnny Morton isn't going to change a whole lot within the offense scheme itself, but we do know that Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to be on the field a little bit more often this season than what we were used to last year. So right now, David Montgomery, if you drafted him, you're flexing him at worst. As the season goes on, maybe he does become a little bit more of a tougher call. Josh Jacobs going up against Detroit, yeah, maybe his ceiling isn't as high as we would like, given how good the run defense for Detroit has been over the last couple of years. But Jacobs will probably find the end zone at least one time in week 1. Bijan Robinson, one of the highest upside anyway running backs that you're going to have this year. Chuba Hubbard will begin as a must start for me. I'm not super concerned about Rico Dowdle. Yes, he's probably going to get a few touches here or there, but Carolina and Jacksonville in week 1, that feels like a good bet for Chuba Hubbard to see 15 to 20 touches right off the bat. Alvin Kamara, Bucky Irving, we know we love him this year. James Conner, Kyron Williams, and Christian McCaffrey will round out my must starts for week 1. All right, the next section of our start and sit video are going to be the landmine players. These are the guys that for one reason or another, I could see this week just not being the week that we all would have hoped for. Now, we are going to start putting some more definitive designations with the players this season. In years past, we've said, yeah, we're going to start or we're going to sit this guy. And that kind of got away from what exactly we were trying to do to help you all out. But once we moved away away from that, people were like, no, no, no. We need your help. And if you say start and they end up being a sit, I don't care. I just want to know what you have to say. And if I end up sitting them, but you had them listed as a sit and they went off, that's my fault. I'm the one that made that decision. I'm just going off some of the information that you gave me. So yes, in 2025, we are bringing back more definitive start and sit designations. So for the landmine category this week, we're going to kick it off with De'Von Achane. He's been banged up. They're going up against Indianapolis, which could lead to a really big week. But I also don't know how healthy De'Von Achane is as of right now, this early in the week. Now, later in the week, he could move from being a landmine to a nuclear player that could absolutely end up going off, and even a must start, really, if you want to debate it, if he ends up being fully healthy and there's no limitations. But based on the last reports, he is expected to suit up for week 1, but he may not be at 100% as of yet. But if you own De'Von Achane, we've got him listed as a start right now, and that's the route that I'm going with him. For the New York Jets, I'm going to list Breece Hall and Braylon Allen both as landmines this week. I will start Breece Hall. I will sit Braylon Allen. And the reason that these guys are landmines is because we really don't know exactly what we're going to be getting from this backfield as of yet. We know it's going to be more of a split backfield this year than what we've been used to with Breece Hall over his first couple of years in the league. And Braylon Allen, what exactly is his role? Is he going to be a goal line guy? Is it going to be more of a true 50-50 split? Will Breece Hall handle the passing game work? Because we really don't know exactly what we're getting yet, and it's against Pittsburgh, it could end up being a down week for both of these guys. But the good news is hopefully we'll get a little bit better of an answer on what that split will end up being. Nick Chubb for Houston going up against the LA Rams this week. I've got him listed as a landmine, but I will still start him if you're looking for an RB3 or a flex opportunity. I don't necessarily love the Nick Chubb matchup, but the one thing I do know is Nick Chubb should see a majority of the carries this week. And it really depends on how good Houston ends up playing. If they're playing well and they're leading the LA Rams, or at least keeping it close, Nick Chubb is probably going to be just fine. The reason he's a landmine, though, is because it could end up going the opposite direction. And maybe the Rams play very well. And maybe the Rams go up by a touchdown or 10 points or whatever it may be. And Houston has to throw the football a little bit more often. Maybe we see some more Dameon Pierce, some guys working on and off the field. And maybe Chubb only sees 12, 13, 14 carries this week. While you might want to start Nick Chubb because you picked him up to play him, in week 1, he could be more of a landmine than anything. Against the LA Chargers, Isaiah Pacheco will be a start for me, even though he's in the landmine category. Isaiah Pacheco is the type of guy that could just absolutely dominate his way to a couple of touchdowns and 80 rushing yards. And really it depends on Kansas City and how much they are up by on the LA Chargers. If this is a close game or a back and forth game, I could see Kansas City throwing the ball an awful lot, which makes Isaiah Pacheco very touchdown dependent. If Kansas City can get a decent lead on the LA Chargers, then maybe they run the ball a little bit more with Isaiah Pacheco. His floor, I don't love his floor. His ceiling, I don't love his ceiling. And that's why he's a landmine this week, even if we're starting him. When the Dallas Cowboys brought in Javonte Williams, I was super excited. I love Javonte Williams his rookie year, and he was on a path to being one of the better running backs in the NFL. But unfortunately, injuries, scheme, new coaches, whatever it's been, he hasn't been himself since then. Maybe in Dallas, he can get back to being what he once was. But that doesn't mean he's not going to have some competition around him. That's why in week 1, he's going to be in the landmine category for me. Going up against Philadelphia, it's already going to be a tougher game, but knowing that Javonte Williams is going to be the starter doesn't necessarily make me feel any better about the fact that Jaden Blue, who we'll talk about later, is going to be waiting right behind him to take more and more touches. And what definitive role will both of these guys end up having? That's something that we're going to see play out over the first couple of weeks. Tough matchup, not knowing exactly what we're going to get. Javonte Williams for me in week 1 will be a sit. Tyrone Tracy for the New York Giants, unfortunately, could also end up being a landmine going up against the Washington Commanders, and I think I'm going to go ahead and sit Tyrone Tracy in week 1 as well. Devin Singletary is currently listed as the RB2 on the depth chart, and if Tyrone Tracy has an early costly fumble in this game, you can bet that you're probably going to see some more Devin Singletary. But it's Cam Scatabo that's got everybody worried at this point. How long does it take for him to start cutting into Tyrone Tracy's touches? Does he cut into Tyrone Tracy's touches just based on his own play? Is it because Tracy's fumbling the ball? Is it because he's not nearly as good? There's a lot of question marks right now about Tyrone Tracy, and I'm willing to bet that a majority of you that drafted him didn't draft him to be your starter anyway. Unless you went RB late, and if you did that, you already made a huge mistake. So more than likely in week 1 going up against Washington, a game that also could get out of hand for the New York Giants pretty quick, Tyrone Tracy will be a sit for me, and we'll wait to see what this backfield looks like over the next couple of weeks. For you OGs of the channel, you probably remember our weekend tailgate show from a couple of years ago, where we had a chef come on and show us some game day recipes that you all could make to make your game day experience that much better. And in 2025, you can now get the Fantasy Football Eats Cookbook by the Fantasy Headliners. 50 plus recipes that are inspired by the 2025 season and some of the best matchups that you're gonna find every single week. For each week of the season, we have an appetizer, an entree, and a drink that's inspired by some of the best matchups of that week. For instance, our appetizer in week 1 is a delicious Texas barbecue cheesesteak pinwheel recipe that's inspired by Dallas playing at Philadelphia. You're already utilizing the Fantasy Headliners to help set your fantasy lineups every single week. Why don't you let us help you set your game day recipe lineup as well? You can cook your way through 54 game day recipes here in 2025. And all you need to do is head on over to thefantasyheadliners.com/cookbook and get yours for only $8.99. And the best part about this is we'll be taking listener recipes throughout the season and including them in our 2026 cookbook. So get yours today, try them out, and send us your own recipes that you love to make on game day. Now let's move on to the nuclear section. And these are the guys that I could see going absolutely nuclear every single week. But they're not quite must starts. They've still got some things going on with them that I don't quite trust. And the first one is going to be TreVeyon Henderson from the New England Patriots going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. I could definitely see TreVeyon Henderson having a huge week for his first NFL regular season game. And if he goes off this week, it's not going to be a shock to anybody. We've seen him doing it during the preseason. If you watch college football, you've seen him do it in college. Ramondre Stevenson could end up being a thorn in his side still, and that's why he's not quite a must start right now. But given the matchup, he's definitely a start for me, and he could end up going off even if Ramondre Stevenson is still stealing some touches. I've got Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby both listed as nuclear possibilities this week. However, I'm only going to give one a start designation as of right now. Let me break down Jacksonville for you. Now, if you've been watching offseason videos, you might be shocked to learn that I have Tank Bigsby as a sit this week while I have Travis Etienne as a start. And while I still fully believe that Tank Bigsby could end up running away with this job, I think going up against an improved Carolina defense in week 1 might be a little bit more than what Tank Bigsby needs to get off to a really good start. While Travis Etienne, if he's truly going to be utilized quite a bit in the passing game, he's got an opportunity to put together a fairly big week, especially if this game can stay close. And I really don't anticipate Jacksonville having a huge lead and maybe using Tank Bigsby a little bit more. The good thing about Tank Bigsby is the fact that he was one of the most efficient running backs in all of football last season when he was getting the workload. And we know that there's still going to be some questions that we have to answer about this backfield. And while I think, again, ultimately Tank Bigsby ends up being the starter and the guy that we start more times than not, Here in week 1, it feels like it might be geared a little bit more towards Travis Etienne, even though both of them could end up having fairly decent weeks. I gotta list my boy Omarion Hampton as a guy that could go nuclear this week, and I've got him listed as a start as well. There's no way that we're gonna sit Omarion Hampton in week 1, and if you've been drafting him recently, you probably had to take him in the 3rd round, so you're going to be starting him. Najee Harris is expected to be back, but there's no telling on how healthy Najee Harris actually is right now, and the Chargers against Kansas City feels like an opportunity for Omarion Hampton to get out in front of Najee Harris and really solidify himself as the RB1. Now, the reason for that, and I know that I had Isaiah Pacheco listed as a landmine, and you might be thinking to yourself, Kyle, it's the same matchup, so wouldn't it be kind of the same thought process? And it's not, because to me, the LA Chargers are a little bit more likely to try to establish the run early and keep Patrick Mahomes off the field as much as possible, while Kansas City feels like they might be in a position to throw the ball a little bit more early and a little bit more often to begin the game. So Omarion Hampton could get some work in the passing game. He could get some work on the ground. He could have 5 or 6 rushes in the first quarter alone, especially again if they try to establish the run early. And if the Chargers can somehow get out in front and keep a lead on this Kansas City Chiefs team, you could see Omarion Hampton used more and more throughout the game. DeAndre Swift and Aaron Jones were a couple of the more polarizing offseason running backs that we talked about. And here in week 1, even though they're both listed as nuclear players, they're going to be listed as starts as well. It's their upside and the potential upside that they have not only for the matchups, but just with the offense that they are in. Now, the thing that DeAndre Swift has going for him this week is the fact that Caleb Williams has not looked great this entire offseason, so maybe Ben Johnson really tries to give Caleb Williams some easy passing work to begin the game. Some dump-offs to DeAndre Swift, running the football. We could see Swift heavily utilized to begin the game, and if that happens, he could have quite a few touches before halftime even gets there, which could give him some fairly decent upside for the week. Aaron Jones, we've got to be a little bit concerned about how many touches Jordan Mason could end up having. And I believe that both of these defenses are not going to be walkovers. So I don't think either of these guys are going to put up huge games this week in terms of what they could do just on the ground. But they could end up having big weeks based on the work that they could get in the passing game as well. And with no Jordan Addison and Adam Thielen only being back for a week or so, we could definitely see Aaron Jones be utilized in the passing game against this Bears pass rush quite a bit. Kenneth Walker is going to close out our nuclear section, and you know I love Kenneth Walker, and you know all offseason long I told everyone, pair him and Zach Charbonnet, get them both on your team, you're going to end up loving the outcome. Now, in week 1 going up against San Francisco, it's not the easiest matchup in the world, but I don't think San Francisco's defense is going to be as tough as maybe it has been over the last couple of years. So I think Kenneth Walker could still end up having a very good week, especially if he's utilized in the passing game as well. And while I would love to list him as a must start, I think we do need to keep an eye on how often Zach Charbonnet will be utilized in week 1, with Kenneth Walker being a little bit banged up over the last couple of weeks. I like Kenneth Walker a lot. He's still going to be a start for me this week. I think he has the potential to have a big game going up against San Francisco. We just can't put him as a must start quite yet. But over the first couple of weeks, as long as he stays healthy, I could see him making his way into that category fairly quickly. Now we're going to move on to the tough call portion of the start and sit video. And these are going to be the borderline guys every single week. Maybe I don't see a nuclear week. Maybe I don't see him as being a landmine. They're certainly not a must start. So maybe we need to dive a little bit more into why each one of these guys may be a start or maybe a sit. And as of right now, some of these guys are going to be more along the lines of either backups or guys that are in a committee with other players, and we really don't know how it's going to look as of yet. So for instance, as of right now, Ollie Gordon for Miami going up against Indianapolis is going to be listed as a sit. Yes, Devon Achane has not been fully healthy, and we don't even know if he's going to be 100% for week 1 as of yet. Ollie Gordon has looked really good in the preseason though. And if for some reason we were to get more towards the end of the week and Miami were to say, hey, Achane's going to be on the field, but he's not going to be close to 100% and he's not going to take a full workload, then maybe Miami against Indianapolis, Ollie Gordon needs to be a player that we think about starting. As of right now, we can't do it though. Maybe later in the week, yes. As of right now, with the information we have to sit Ollie Gordon. Earlier in the offseason, Ramondre Stevenson was a guy that we just warned people about. Hey, he's not going to go away. He's got a bigger contract. There's no way that he's going to be cut, and they're certainly not just going to sit him. But TreVeyon Henderson has looked better and better and better every single week, whether it be in a game, whether it be in training camp, scrimmages, whatever. TreVeyon Henderson continued to impress. And then Ramondre Stevenson dealt with an injury, and all of a sudden it became, well, if we're handcuffing somebody, we're not handcuffing Stevenson with Henderson, we're handcuffing Henderson with Stevenson in week 1 with New England playing against Las Vegas, while Ramondre Stevenson going up against this Las Vegas defense could end up having a decent day. I gotta list him as a sit right now because it just feels like all of the momentum is with TreVeyon Henderson. And Ramondre Stevenson, since he hasn't been healthy, I really don't know if he's gonna have a full workload. So in week 1, I'm gonna list him as a sit. Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson, teammates from the Cleveland Browns, listed here in the tough call section. Now, going up against Cincinnati, I think Cincinnati is going to win this game, and I don't think Cincinnati is really going to have that hard of a time doing it. Sorry, Cleveland fans, nothing against you. Cincinnati is just better on paper as of right now, but we know that Cleveland plays them tough every single game. But because of that, Jerome Ford will be a start for me, while Dylan Sampson will end up being a sit. If it was reversed, and if Cleveland was a superior team, and I felt like they were going to beat Cincinnati, then I feel like we would see more Dylan Sampson than Jerome Ford this week. But Jerome Ford is likely going to be utilized in the passing game a little bit more often. And even though Joe Flacco is going to air it out, he's a savvy veteran that understands that if the play isn't just there for them, and with it being week 1, maybe he's still getting a little bit used to some certain things, the dump off for Jerome Ford could end up being there. And while I don't think Jerome Ford is going to have some crazy good week, I do think he could end up being just good enough that if you need a flex option, he could end up being your guy. A couple of more teammates in the same division, Jaylen Warren and Caleb Johnson from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the good thing this week, going up against the New York Jets, I think Pittsburgh can win this game, and I think they can utilize the run to do it. For the New York Jets, are they going to be better? I would hope so, but I don't think they're going to be 10 times better. I don't think they're going to necessarily be a playoff team this season. Jaylen Warren and Caleb Johnson, if Pittsburgh can create turnovers from Justin Fields, both of these guys are going to see more time with the offense being on the field a little bit more often. And that's why I got them listed both as starts this week. Now, let's break apart what exactly makes both of them a start. Well, for Jaylen Warren, Pittsburgh, as of Monday morning, committed to him with a new extension of 2 years. So now he's going to be in Pittsburgh for the next 3 seasons, including this one. Jaylen Warren clearly has showcased to Pittsburgh that he's worth sticking around. They chose him over letting Najee Harris depart. They kept Jaylen Warren, and even though they drafted Caleb Johnson, the thoughts in training camp were Jaylen Warren's a better blocker. He could be out there on passing downs way more often. He can run the football well. He can do a lot of things. So easing Caleb Johnson into a starter role probably doesn't need to happen as quickly with Jaylen Warren. I do believe Jaylen Warren will end up being the starter. He's listed number 1 on the depth chart right now, and he'll probably see the majority of touches in week 1. However, like I mentioned a minute ago, if Pittsburgh can create turnovers and keep the ball on offense, Caleb Johnson could find himself running in a touchdown, probably 1 touchdown, maybe give you 50 or 60 rushing yards, and that ends up being a flex start anyway. Let's talk about another pair of teammates with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. We really don't know how this backfield split is going to end up working out either. And while it feels like J.K. Dobbins is going to be the starter and will likely see a majority of time on the field, it's hard to argue with the fact that R.J. Harvey has some home run ability. And maybe he's going to be utilized in the passing game a little bit as well this week. With Denver playing Tennessee, I don't necessarily think this is going to be some defensive matchup where this game ends up being 10-7 or 10-6 or 14-10 or something like that. I think these offenses could end up being a little bit better, especially Tennessee, than what people may anticipate. So if this game is a little bit closer, I could see RJ Harvey maybe being utilized a little bit more, especially for his pass catching work, and that could give him a little bit of a better upside than what J.K. Dobbins has. Now, the good thing for both of these guys, depending on where you drafted them, you may not be forced to start them, especially J.K. Dobbins, because he was going rounds after RJ Harvey. And I do believe J.K. Dobbins isn't going to go anywhere right now. And depending on how week 1 plays out, he could find himself as being a guy that's listed as a start more than RJ Harvey to begin the season. But based on draft capital, based on the fact that you probably drafted RJ Harvey to at least be a flex play for you, the matchup itself, and maybe Harvey getting a little bit more work in the passing game with some higher upside big playability, I'll list Harvey as a start this week, and I'll list Dobbins as a sit. For Najee Harris, he's going to be listed as a sit this week. That could end up changing in the coming weeks, especially if this becomes a two-headed backfield. Maybe Omarion Hampton doesn't run away with the job right away. Maybe Najee Harris is way more healthier than what we all anticipated. This week, I'm not going to risk it. He will be a sit. Jaden Blue for Dallas is going to be a sit, and if this ends up being an offensive slugfest, I could see Jaden Blue being on the field a little bit more often than what Javonte Williams would be this week. But I still can't start Jaden Blue as of yet because I don't know how healthy he actually is and how often will he be used in the passing game. There's some things that we need to see play out with Jaden Blue, and in week 1 you probably don't need to start him. If you're in a league where you're starting Jaden Blue, you probably really messed up your draft. And if you have to put him out there, keep your fingers crossed. But for a majority of you that own Jaden Blue and drafted him right around his ADP, more than likely you can afford to sit him, even if he ends up having a decent week because of it being a shootout. Austin Eckler, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and Chris Rodriguez. These three guys are going to have eyes on them continuously over the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. And going up against the New York Giants in week 1, I don't mind this matchup, but there's not a whole lot of clarity to who the main guy is going to be. Krosky-Merritt had a good training camp and a good preseason, but I don't think he's just necessarily unseated Austin Eckler and even Chris Rodriguez for a majority of the touches. Chris Rodriguez on a per touch basis last season was actually pretty darn good, even though he didn't get a ton of volume. I don't think that guy's just going to disappear. Austin Eckler could definitely be utilized in the passing game a little bit more often, but this doesn't feel like a game where he's going to need to be utilized in the passing game. I think Washington ends up winning this game pretty easily, and probably Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt ends up being a guy that sees, I would say, 45% of the touches at being split evenly between these three guys in the backfield. And more than likely, he's also the guy that could end up scoring a touchdown as well, and maybe being utilized at the end of the game when things are kind of out of reach and they want to give him those touches so he can start growing a little bit. So Krosky-Merritt will be a start for me this week. Don't just glaze over the fact that Austin Eckler or Chris Rodriguez are sits, because both of these guys could still show us something that we need to keep in mind for the rest of the season. Jordan Mason and Zach Charbonnet are both going to be listed as sits in week 1, even though these are two handcuffs, two backups that I have wanted all offseason long. I am not going to play them in week 1 because we really don't know the exact extent of the split of the backfield. We know both of these guys have some really nice upside potential if Aaron Jones or Kenneth Walker were to get hurt. But as of right now, I don't think we really need to be starting our handcuffs. Does Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones become guys that you could play together? Potentially. Does Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker become guys that you could play together? Potentially. But in week 1, given the matchups that they're going to have and the fact that we don't know a ton about what's going on with the split backfield, I'll go ahead and start the starters and sit the backups. The final section of each start and sit video for every position is really where I feel like we have taken the biggest step forward with our start and sit analysis. You know that we love analytics here. Every call that we make, all the analysis that we put out, we try to back up with analytics and research and numbers trends, whatever we can find to help paint the picture for why we feel the way that we do. And for those of you that have been around for a while, you know about my dynamic running back rating, a system that I developed to help us find the upside of players on any given week. Well, I decided to develop something that is the complete opposite, and that is our confidence scoring system. And this is going to help us find the floor for players every single week. The DRBR is all about upside. The competency scoring system is all about what players can present us the best floor on every single game. And they can be placed into 4 individual tiers. The S tier being the elite playmakers that we're going to start with supreme confidence every single week, all the way down to the C tier. These are going to be the guys that we are going to be concerned about. If we have to start them, yeah, they could end up having a really good week, but the floor has not been good this season, and they're a very volatile player. And I developed this system kind of the same way that I developed the DRBR, taking tons of statistics, tons of information, looking at volume, looking at efficiency, looking at fantasy points, putting it all into our formula, and then getting the numbers that help us decide how safe a player could be. And for this week, we don't have any information yet, so we are going to be putting this information in based on 2024 stats. Maybe some of these things will end up looking the same moving forward, but in the upcoming weeks, you're going to start to find a scoring system that is going to help you figure out which one of your running backs are going to give you the best floor and the highest confidence every single week. Headliner Nation, I know it's a dramatic change and it might take a little bit to get used to, but what I can promise you right now is that this will be the best analysis that you're going to find on YouTube any given week. There are no other channels out there that I know of that have developed a scoring system to help us make calls every single week. It's powered by stats, it's powered by data, and it's not powered by my stomach where I'm like, yep, I think this or this may not end up happening. They are scores that give you real-time information to make the toughest decisions every single week. And the analysis isn't really changing because a lot of the things that I talk about and a lot of the things that we utilize in our new competency scoring system are the same things that we've talked about every single week. It's a new layout, a new format. It's going to help us get through some players a lot quicker that we already know that we're playing and allow us to spend more time on some other players that need the analysis because they're way tougher of a call. So on the way out of here today, Headliner Nation, make sure you hype the video up, spread the word. The fantasy headliners are where you need to be to win fantasy championships in 2025. Use that hype feature, hit the like video, leave a comment down below with any of your questions that you have throughout the week. And don't forget, we've already posted our schedule of all of our weekly content. I'll throw it up on the screen for you here real quick so you can remember exactly when all of our shows will end up taking place. Put them in your schedule, write them in a notebook, on a sticky note, it doesn't matter. Just remember to be here for every show this season. Welcome to the Fantasy Headliners. If this is your first time visiting us, we hope that you stay for the rest of the season because the Fantasy Headliners are where championships are won. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.